pressing the record button. Thank you and welcome to our webinar on using iPads in adult literacy class. We want to talk to you today about the benefits and challenges of using iPads, and we are really excited to have with us a team from Hamilton who took the plunge and really went in and decided to try iPads and is now using the iPads in their program. To make sure that you know who is speaking at what time, this is just a quick overview of us as hosts. So on the left, this is Monica, me, I'm speaking right now. And on the right, you will see Maria. We both work for Alpha Plus in Toronto. We organize all kinds of webinars, and we consider ourselves to be very lucky to have our guests today to share their thoughts and experience with using iPads. When it comes to our presenters, we have a great team. We have a team from Hamilton Literacy Council, and we are going to have Helen, Wilma, Sue, and Tim, who will be talking today. We divided the content into different groupings. That way, each presenter will have a chance to share their own story on using iPads as well. And now I'm going to say that somebody's passing on the microphone, but that's okay. Quick overview of what we are going to do. I am doing the housekeeping and introductions, and I'm going to wrap up the session. I will also respond to any questions or feedback you will be providing in the question box. Then Helen is going to be discussing the decision and the plan for the integration of iPads in their program. Wilma will focus on the fear of implementation and what they have done about it. So we'll discuss the experience of using iPads in a small group, in this case, reading. And then Kim will touch up on math, using the iPads with a small group for math. And finally, Maria, our colleague from Alpha Plus, is going to wrap up a bit more by sharing information about another program that's using iPads. And also, she will provide some quick tips and on finding apps and also specific apps that she wanted everyone to know about. So just very quickly about the webinar housekeeping tips. If you haven't used GoToWebinar before, we are in listen mode only, so you're able to hear us, to see the screen, but you won't be able to use your microphones. On the left side, you should see the slides and information we are sharing with you. On the right side, you should have your own panel where you have some of the tools. Usually that's where you can control your audio, where you can ask questions and see feedback from us by responding to your questions. I just want to point out that there may be some issues that you have with your panel for controlling the tools or for the questions. If that happens to you, look for an orange arrow. Sometimes there's this tiny orange arrow that points to the left or to the right. That controls the panel and it hides it. So if in your case, if you notice that your panel is disappearing, just go to the view and there will be an option for you to uncheck the auto hide control panel. That is where you can make sure that your panel is not hiding anymore. Again, just to make sure if you are having any issues with the audio, make sure that you go to your audio section to test all the settings. And questions box is the main one for you to communicate with us. Again, because we have a big group of participants and also a group of presenters, we figured it will be a bit easier for all of us if I will take in all the questions, I will gather them. During the presentation, we will have sections where we'll stop, we'll pause, and take questions from the field and from the group. So at this time, I will be just answering and reading out all the questions that will be coming in. And just a quick reminder that today's session is being recorded. And it will be shared on our YouTube channel and also included in a link that will go out to all the presenters after this session. I'm going to hand it over to Helen now, who is going to start off with the presentation. Helen?
Okay, good afternoon, and I'll start with a sound check. Hear me okay, Monica?
Yes.
So thank you all for attending this webinar. We're a little bit nervous because we've never done this before, but with Monica behind us and Maria, we've decided we're game. So at any rate, this first slide we've included just to give you an idea of our agency profile. Despite appearances, it isn't an advertisement or a promotion of any kind, although we feel we're pretty good at what we do. We thought you might like a little bit of background information if you're trying to relate our experiences to what you might experience or what you might expect just around the corner. Next slide, please, Monica.
There you go.
Community Literacy Ontario is currently working on a project called the Culture of Evaluation. For our agency, evaluation is part of our culture. One of the things that we do each year is hold a focus group with our students to find out what they liked about the program in the past year and what we shouldn't tamper with, and also to get ideas about what we should do differently or give a try in the coming year. We hold a staff debriefing to find out the same two things. After these meetings, the staff and I work together to figure out how we can incorporate these changes into the program in the coming year. These meetings are energizing and are a catalyst for change. Next slide, please. In 2013, program results were pretty astounding, actually. There was a number of changes that students suggested and staff agreed with, but by far and away the most exciting and challenging was incorporating more technology into our classrooms. Next slide. This slide just lists some of the key things that we needed to take into consideration, a checklist of sorts. I'll be touching on all of these things during this segment. Next slide. There wasn't enough wiggle room in our budget to purchase a couple of iPads, let alone a dozen, so we knew we would need outside help. Visions of all sorts of funding danced through our heads. And just how many boxes of chocolate almonds would it take to buy an iPad? Thankfully, we didn't have to go that route. And I don't have that information to share with you. Of course, sponsorship or grant applications also occurred to us. But then the penny dropped, so to speak. The Ministry of Training in Colleges and Universities has set innovation and the integration of digital technologies as two of their priorities. So we thought, surely, since we were game to integrate and innovate, they would want to support our initiative. I contacted our training consultant, Sarah, and told her we wanted to do our bit to support the ministry's priorities. And the only thing stopping us was a few $1,000s. Sarah was great. She sent a request for additional one-time LBS funding form to us, warning us that there was no guarantee we'd get the funding. But it sounded like we could make a good case for it, and we did. A word of caution, if anyone listening to this webinar is considering applying for in-year funding, don't wait until too late in the year. The funds have to be spent in the same fiscal year you receive them. I really had no trouble spending ours. Next slide, Monica. We decided to purchase iPads rather than one of the other tablets available, even though iPads were quite a bit more expensive. And we did this for two main reasons. As part of their integration of technology into the classrooms and battling poverty, the school boards in Hamilton gave iPads to all the first graders living in the areas of highest poverty. The children actually bring the iPads home and are assigned homework on them. So it made sense, as part of our initiative to support parent literacy, to follow suit. Many of our students who are parents live in the same areas of poverty. And the second reason was there are lots of free educational apps available for iPads, and more are coming out by the minute. So we thought the extra we paid for the iPads might be more than offset by good quality free software. Next slide. I have the best staff on the planet. But even so, and even though they were willing to take the leap and integrate technology in their classrooms, I knew that for successful integration, without massive teacher resignation or an outbreak of post-traumatic stress, we had to make the time for staff to get the training and reach the comfort level they needed before iPads made their classroom debut. Apple dealers offer training sessions with the purchase, and I was quick to take advantage of that. I'm going to leave it to Wilma in her segment to share her thoughts on that amazing opportunity to learn. Another training opportunity presented itself in the form of one of our volunteer board of directors who works for the public library. I'm not sure what her proper title is, but I know it's not librarian. In fact, there may not even be such a thing as a librarian in the library anymore. But whatever her title, Melissa performs an incredibly valuable service in the library. She offers technology support classes. Melissa kindly offered to provide us with a private group session as soon as we got our iPads. Unfortunately, one of our instructors couldn't attend the group session, so he booked a one-to-one iPad tutorial at the library branch nearest his home. Alpha Plus has offered so much training support that I won't even mention them here, as I've dedicated a whole slide to them. So enough said about Alpha for now. A chance for self-discovery learning was perhaps the most important component of the training plan. I'll never know how many times the teaching staff was ready to throw their iPads out the window, but all iPads and instructors are accounted for. Next slide, Monica. It was our incredible good fortune to purchase our iPads around the time when Alpha Plus launched their project, Preparing Digital Educators. I have such tremendous respect and admiration and confidence in the ability of the team at Alpha Plus to provide resources, training support, and even tame technology that when I initially contacted Nancy Friday, I was prepared to pay for one or some of the Alpha Plus team to provide training right here or over there or anywhere, but we just really wanted that training. It turns out I didn't have to. We were one of the lucky 16 agencies invited to take part in the Engage in IT Planning and Coaching with Alpha Plus. Maria was assigned to our agency. I'm not sure if she got the short straw, but Maria worked with us for a year, and her coaching not only made the whole process of integration more manageable and less stressful, but she even added a measure of added excitement and perhaps left a little bit of the luck of the Irish on our doorstep. Definitely, if you're planning to integrate more technology into your operation, I would encourage you to contact Alpha Plus to tap into their expertise. I have had the pleasure of working and training with Monica, Maria, and Nancy, and I love them as trainers as much as the training. I'm sorry that Nancy moved on from Alpha, and I hope Monica and Maria won't even think of leaving. Next slide, please. Storage. Studies show that iPads can greatly enhance the learning and teaching experience in the classroom, but things will go better if they're all charged up and ready to go when you want to use them, and they're exactly where you expect to find them. I would say a good storage and charging base are essential, and these carts are wonderful. We really enjoy them, and we have had no problems with them. So whether you have a dozen iPads or several dozen, there is a charging storage cart perfect for you. Next slide. To enjoy the whole iPad experience in the classroom, behind the scenes you need tech support that you can depend on. If your tech support is really good, no one will ever know he or she is around, let alone needed at all. But just you try and get along without that support, and one day, when you least expect it, you will find instead of enhancing your lesson, the iPad just refuses to do anything but time wasting. If you plan to use iPads or other technology in the classroom, budget for tech support and make sure that tech support gets the support that he or she needs. Next slide, please. Just before moving on to any questions that you might have about this segment of the webinar, I wanted to share this last slide. When staff and students help choose the direction you need to go and help plan the way, all the pieces are more likely to come together, and you will arrive at your destination with or without the help of iPads. This brings then to the first segment of the webinar. So next, the questions period, I guess. Leave it to you, Monica.
Yes, so if you have any questions for Helen or the team, please feel free to type them into your question box. I will read them aloud and then Helen will be able to answer them. And when we wrap up this section, we are going to move to Wilma, who is going to talk about the fear of implementation. So let's just take a few seconds to pause and see if you have any questions for the team. Now, if nothing comes up, keep in mind that we can always answer your questions later on. But I have the first one. This is from Yvonne. How much time did you spend on training?
That's really difficult to say. I would say we had 3 evening sessions with the people from Apple. Monica came down for half a day, but I would actually say the majority of the training the teachers did in the self-discovery method. So I really don't know how much time they spent. They could have been every night to the wee hours of the morning. But I mean, sometimes they would come in looking pretty tired. So I suspect.
Okay, and then this one is from Kathy. Does Apple provide tech support too, or did you use a local company?
Yes, well, when we purchased the iPads, they give you, I think it was 6 months of tech support, and we did tap into that for certain.
Okay. That's always good to know. And if you are in the location maybe where you can go to the Apple store, I think they also organize all kinds of support and maybe even training right on the spot as well.
Yeah, and I think we were given an option of more training, purchasing more training if we wanted to, but we decided that that would be enough. If we didn't get it within 6 months, we were in trouble.
Okay. So I think that's it for the questions for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Wilma.
Hi, my name is Wilma Chopra, and I'm the Program Coordinator, Small Groups at the Hamilton Literacy Council. Helen has just recounted how we came to acquire the iPads. I wish I could say that I took to the iPads like a duck to water, but it was just the opposite. I thought that if today I could share with you some aspects of the transition from reluctance to embracing the idea of using iPads in the classroom, it might encourage those of you with the same feelings of reluctance to take the first step. My first step is a reluctance to let go. In acquiring the iPads, we had leaped straight into the 21st century, right into the digital age. I had been using a computer at home and at the Literacy Council, but strictly on a only if needed basis. I was a pen and paper person, which was my first roadblock, or should I say, digital highway block, a reluctance to let go. I was used to a particular way of doing things, tried and tested methods, methods which had withstood the passage of time. I just did not want to let go of these. Honestly, these were just old habits, and as we know, old habits die hard. Let me give you an example. I got myself a cell phone, again, only to be used in emergencies. My children try to introduce me to the new order of things, to the wonders of cell phone usage. Look, they'd say, your phone has a calculator. And I would think, now why would I need a calculator when I have 10 fingers? Look, here's the GPS. I don't need a GPS to take me from Dundas to downtown Hamilton. The number 52 bus does an excellent job. On the few occasions that I have sent messages, I write them in complete sentences with proper grammar and punctuation. No LOLs or TTYLs for me. I even sign off with a love you, mom. This caused endless mirth because the recipients already knew who sent the message before they even opened them to read them. My second self-made roadblock was a fear of failure. I have to admit that deep within I knew that smartphones, computers, and iPads were the way to go. The students would enjoy using them, and it would benefit them enormously. There was a part of me that was actually super excited, and yet I was holding back. What was holding me back was a fear of failure. I had been an elementary school teacher for over 15 years. During that time, my little students regarded me as the source of all knowledge, the fountain of all wisdom. I could do anything. That was their perception of a teacher. Certainly, I was no fountain of wisdom, knowledge, or anything much else, but I still knew more than they did. As a teacher, I was expected to know more. So how could I now stand before a group of students, iPad in hand, trying to talk, explain, and demonstrate things of which I knew very, very little? Now here's where my journey begins to take a very broad U-turn. Could I have the next slide, please, Monica?
Yep.
Learning new tricks. One day, Helen invited us, that is, the instructors, my colleagues, and myself, to her office. There on the table were 12 iPads, each in its own colorful case, red, yellow, blue, green, like bright little balloons. She asked us to pick whichever color we wanted. Now, asking us to choose our own iPad was a masterstroke of genius, because as we practically lunged for the iPads, we were consciously or subconsciously committing to using them. Our ownership of the iPad sealed our commitment. Just holding it made me feel smarter. I was hooked. The next step was learning how to use it. We went to the store from where the iPads had been purchased, as the gentleman there had kindly agreed to teach us how to use this new device. I will not go into the details of that training session, except to say that 5 minutes into the session, the gentleman was ready to bolt out the door. I think he believed that he was going to merely demonstrate the finer points of this new tool. He was not expecting to start at lesson 1, how to turn on your iPad. I was one who had no idea what to press and took wild stabs at this poor device, hoping to ultimately hit the right spot. By the end of the session, we had learned quite a bit, at least enough to keep us intrigued and wanting to learn more. We reached a turning point when Maria of Alpha Plus came to show us how we could use the iPad in our classrooms. She was knowledgeable, had a great sense of humor, and made us feel that this whole business was a piece of cake, nothing to be afraid of. More importantly, she showed us the apps which we could use and which would be of great help to our students. It was a very practical approach. It was as if someone had suddenly switched on a bright light and now we could see clearly. We were learning how we could actually use it with our students. Before I knew it, I had a new best friend. I call this segment Learning New Tricks because even today, using the iPad feels like a bit of magic. My new friend. Though we now knew what could be done, the iPad and I still had to develop a little more familiarity. This was a new relationship, and we needed to get to know each other a little better. What better way to do that than to take my new friend home? And that is exactly what we did. We all took our iPads home. This helped a lot. In the privacy of our homes, we could experiment with the iPads. Just try new things without anyone watching us, or the fear of being laughed at if we did something silly. In time, I progressed from being afraid to just wary to thinking, hey, iPad, you're not too bad. And finally reaching the stage of, we could actually become good friends. This is where I am now. I am comfortable, though I still have a lot to learn. I have enough confidence to stand before a class and think, I know a few things and I would love to learn more, and maybe we can learn together. I keep thinking, what better way to practice what we are always preaching? Have confidence in yourself and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Thank you all for your time and attention. If there are any questions, we can take them now. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Wilma. This was great. And just a reminder, we are open to any questions, comments, or feedback. Some of you listening to our session may have gone through the similar experience. Please feel free to share that in your question box as well. And as we are waiting for feedback from you, there's one more question for Helen. And that question is from Lorna. The question was, when can you apply for this funding for the iPads?
Okay, you can apply for that funding at any time, right this minute. Like, don't leave the webinar though, because we still have a couple more things to say, okay?
But it wasn't a call for funding. You just went to your ministry representative and said, we would like to do this. How do we go about that?
Yeah, there is provision for anybody at any time to request funding to increase the capacity. So don't wait. As I say, the only timing you need to be careful of is that you still need to spend it within that same fiscal year. So that's the kind of sensitive timing part, but any time at all. And you just have to explain the rationale, because that kind of funding just isn't in our regular budget. So good luck.
Thank you, Helen. And no questions from Wilma yet, or comments for Wilma. I'm going to collect them as we go, but rather than waiting for the questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Sue, who will continue with the presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Sue Squires and I'm a small group instructor at the Hamilton Literacy Council. I'm going to speak just a little bit about the security precautions we use within the classroom. So we use a sign-in sheet which requires students to sign for a numbered iPad, which is returned to the instructor each time the student leaves the class, so washroom breaks, etc. And then, as Helen mentioned previously, they're stored in a locked cabinet at the end of class. The next slide, please. So most of my iPad use in the past year was in the reading class, and particularly with novel studies. So I'm going to talk first about the pros and then the cons of using the iPad. One of the pros was that student motivation was much higher, and students could participate in more active reading because of the highlighting tool. So they could highlight words that they were unable to decode, or if they needed a definition, or they needed to reread a sentence or paragraph. Another pro is that students are able to adjust the font size or the brightness of the page to suit their personal need or preference. Font size, however, was also a con because it made it difficult to refer to a particular page or paragraph when everyone is using a different font. Students still needed a hard copy of related activities to be able to complete homework, but did not have access to the iPad at home. And another con would be that more setup time was required to unlock the cabinet, get them all out, clean them, make sure that they were all charged appropriately. Pacing the instruction was sometimes difficult because some students would need assistance getting back to a page or getting in or out of the site. And while that was happening, other students were kind of sitting idly. One of the ways we expanded the reading experience was using the map feature on the iPad, and we used this site in conjunction with novels, particularly a novel called One Way Ticket. The students enjoyed using this site to track the itinerary of characters in the novel who were traveling by train through various parts of Europe. Next slide, please. Also made use of the iPad in Essential Skills class, and you'll see listed on your slide a couple of the sites that we used. This site had a user-friendly inventory of questions to help people self-assess their learning styles. And once their style was identified, it had some easy-to-understand strategies that work best for the individual learning styles. We also used the 211 site. We use this site to familiarize students with the 211 helpline. They browse through several topics such as community programs, homelessness, income support, etc. and then students presented scenarios to and others had to determine which topic would be the most relevant to their particular scenario. Students also did a specific research on the Hamilton area food banks, example, location, hours of operation, etc. Just before we move on to questions, I would like to say that the iPad experience has been very enjoyable and beneficial to student learning. I personally have gone from iPads, bah humbug, to how did I ever live without you? Any questions now, Monica?
That's so sweet, Humbug. Again, I'm opening up the floor to the questions or feedback for Sue or Wilma or Helen. Please feel free to send them in. I do have a question actually. So did you have a case when somebody was trying to walk away with your iPad?
No, we haven't had that problem at all. And in fact, all of the students are very watchful as well. You know, and they'll actually remind each other, hey, don't forget to, you know, put that on Sue's desk. You're leaving for the washroom. Or
that's perfect. And
so far, no, that hasn't come up.
That's perfect. And the other quick question I had was when you use iPads with the learners, some applications require them to be logged in or not logged in. How do you deal sometimes with that switching between accounts? Do you use apps where you don't have to log in, or do you actually have students log in and then remember to log out?
We actually have an account that's set up in the Literacy Council's name, and then they would just but that only came up really if we weren't using any apps where you had to pay for them or buy them ahead of time. So for example, for the novel studies, Helen had them already all downloaded for us using our account.
Okay. And then there's a question from Lorna. Lorna is asking, where did you find the novels and how much did they cost?
The novels are all from New Press, Oxford Bookworm, and we had hard copies of most of them already in the building, and then we just simply went from the Oxford list and downloaded the ones we wanted.
So did you have to pay?
We have about 8 on there right now.
Did you have to pay for them?
Yes, I believe Helen paid a fee for them.
All right. If you have any other questions, please feel free to send them in. We will continue asking them and getting feedback from the team. And now I'm going to move and hand over the microphone to Kim.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Bridle, small group instructor at the Hamilton Literacy Council. I mostly use the iPads in math classes. And the first slide, my math app, this is mastering the basics. However, it does go up to a grade 8 level as well. And each level has numerous problems, and there's explanations there, and even an instructional video. There's number sense, time, coins, measurement, fractions, decimal operations as well. The difficulty adjusts automatically as the student improves. The next one, Flash to Pass, this is played as well by difficulty, but on a calculator. And if you give an incorrect answer, it'll buzz at you. It also has a timer if you wanted to time yourself. The QS Math is a mix, and it's up to a level 4. And it's a quick strike, so there's circles moving all over the screen, and you just click on the correct answers. And there's also a timer there, but it's 10, 20, or 45 seconds. The pros for this is the students are able to work at their own pace, and it's a great diversion from books. It's a whole new way of learning for them. And it really accelerates and improves their learning. They gain confidence in their abilities, and they challenge themselves as well as others. The cons of this was it was a little time consuming retrieving the iPads from the lock cabinet. Then they had to sign them out and then hand out the iPads and then return them and in turn signing them back in. But and they couldn't do printouts, but other than that, the pros certainly outweighed the cons. Please turn to the next slide, Monica. I presented a pilot food handling course, and there were many videos to choose from, such as there was an introduction to safe food handling, and it consisted of 6 parts. There was one on personal hygiene, cross-contamination, temperature control, foodborne illnesses, hand washing. So it was a great break from that for them from my talking all the time. There's another app called Flow Free, and this you must cover all the squares in a grid by dragging to connect to the matching colors with a pipe, and it creates a flow. So it involves thinking skills and manipulation to solve each problem or puzzle. In essential skills, I used the career cruising website, and the students all did a personalized plan, with either job descriptions for their goal, salaries, job readiness, resources to prepare the students for the world of work. So they enjoyed doing that. Now, my experience with the iPads in the classroom at first was extreme uneasiness and a feeling of doubt. But I experienced some challenges too. However, I soon became very familiar with it, and now I see how the students are so motivated and inspired with this device. It is very encouraging. On a personal use of this iPad, I have become addicted to Pinterest, 4 Pics, 1 Word, and Lumosity. You must try these. Are there any questions?
There's a few questions actually coming in. This one is from Lorna. How long did it take for your students to learn how to use iPads?
Sorry. It took a little bit of time, and it still does at times, depending on, sometimes they like to stay on the one app, particularly the Flash to Pass. So they seem to get just used to that, and then to go to the other app, and so they're back and forth, but they've got a pretty good handle on it now. But it did take a little bit of time.
I just wanted to add to that in the small group classes we have continuous intake, so we'll get new students in who've never used the iPad, and then the instructors basically at that time can help them, and I think the other students will sometimes help out as well. But it's not an onerous job, I think. I don't know, I'm looking at my teachers, passing the microphone back.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is actually from Kimberly, and it actually goes along the lines of a question I also had. Kimberly asks, how long did students use the iPad for in each class, and how did it integrate into the flow of the rest of the class?
We use the iPads generally, myself in math. We'll use it the majority of the class. Usually in math, I'll give them a group problem to figure out, and then we turn on all the iPads and they work at their own pace at that time. So I just basically walk around for probably, I would say about almost an hour in each class.
So if I can just clarify, the students will be in the class for 2 hours, 3 hours overall on that day, and then 1 hour will be for iPads?
1 hour would be for iPads, and it's an hour and 15 minutes, so the other 15 minutes would be a group.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay, that's perfect. Any other questions? Again, please feel free to send them in to us. There is another one coming in, and this is from Karen. Do you use the iPads in one-on-one tutoring situations?
I think I'll take that question. No, we use them in several different classes, and in fact now as we're becoming more comfortable, we're just using them whenever an instance arises where an iPad is the perfect tool for the student to use. So we don't shy away now. We just think, oh, it's a resource that's there, and if it's anything to do with geography or a world map, or then we would think, oh, we should pull the iPads out.
And another question from Kimberly. Did using iPads directly lead to improved outcomes? And did you see increase in test scores, for example?
Okay, I'll answer that. We don't really do standardized testing here, certainly using the iPads. But, as far as reading comprehension and math comprehension, this is where we notice a big difference. So you'll actually, every student moves at their own speed. For instance, in the math class, they're at different levels. And this is another reason that the iPads have been fantastic. I mean, I know Kim has shared with me because they can move along and she can give individual attention while some other student is working. I know in the reading class, as far as the group, I think the group benefits when somebody else is reading the iPad as well, and they're pretty much at the same level in the reading groups, I believe. Although Sue can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, no, that's correct. Okay, she's nodding her head, so I got something right.
So one more question. This is from Kathy. Do you still use computers or have the iPads replaced everything?
Oh, no, absolutely not. In fact, when I applied for the iPads, I also put in for additional laptops to be used in the class as well, because as Kim was mentioning, for the printing and that, it's really nice. A lot of the word processing and those kinds of things, the laptops are certainly superior than the iPads for that. So yeah, when we requested the funding, we went for both.
And you got funding for both?
And we did.
Okay. Okay, this is from Yvonne. Do you use any apps with learners that are not directly related to reading and math?
I think Kim and Sue were sharing ones we use for like essential skills and the research and that kind of increased independence kind of things. So again, I think, Yvonne, we kind of, when it's naturally arises when reading a story or doing some math, where an iPad might be the perfect tool for a student to use.
And it probably depends also on the needs of the learner. So I can think of, I know you have used maps with some of the learners, but also, calendar or being able to make a list of things to purchase or to do. Different apps will probably be very useful and allow for that independence as well.
Yeah, I think with our student profile, at the beginning I kind of mentioned our agency profile. We serve the lowest level of literacy skills, so we don't find that our students really gravitate toward things like the calendar. Those are skills and to-do lists. It's actually the speech to text might be something that they might pick up on and use more. Mm-hmm. But it's just because we're dealing with students at essential skills level 1 and maybe not even to the end of 2, we kind of find that we don't use as much of those other ones.
Okay. And then this is from Rachel. See, we're getting more questions. It's fantastic. Okay, this is from Rachel, and Rachel is asking, does each learner have to obtain their own Apple ID?
No, no, we avoid that with the applications that we use. Basically, when we set up the iPads, we set them all up with an agency ID.
Okay. And then Laura is asking, have you used an app for aptitude testing or assessment?
No, we haven't done that yet. But, we use this as an additional learning tool. We haven't used it in any way. We want to make sure that the students feel comfortable and not stressed at all using it. And I don't think we're at the point yet where we're comfortable enough to use it as a testing vehicle.
Okay. I do have one more question.
Well, Sue has a comment. Can she comment first?
Absolutely.
I was just going to mention that the only assessment tool that I used on there and was the learning styles, because they actually did a self-assessment of their skills and traits, which helped them then to determine their own personal learning style. So that was an assessment type of tool that we used.
And so would you remember the name of that app?
Oh, it's listed on the slide. It was the www.educationplanner.org.
Okay.
So you go into that site and it gives you several levels of assessment questions. So I chose, because I was using it with the independence group, so I chose like the lowest level of questions.
Okay.
For them, but you can adjust the type, the wording of the questions and so on according to the levels of the students.
That's perfect. So the one more question for me was, you may not have experienced that, but have you come across apps that you think would be very interesting and you like them, but there's cost related to it? And if you did, how did you get funding for that?
I really haven't come across that. Basically, it's just our mindset that if it costs money, we don't use it.
Okay.
Basically, but
Okay.
Helen has something to add to that.
Yep.
Well, I think back at the beginning when we were kind of talking about one of the reasons we chose the Apple was because there was just so many free apps that we realized that we shouldn't have to put money into that. So yeah, that was a big part of our decision.
Okay, that's good to know as well. I know that some of the costs are coming up more and more because of the flexibility or the pro accounts that you get. And I was just wondering if you had a way around it. But for sure, that's something to consider for those who may want to purchase some apps to have that bit of funding for that as well.
Yeah, I think if you're applying for funding, throw that in there.
Yeah. Okay. This is perfect. So there's one more question from Julie. Have you used WordQ with the iPad? It's probably an app. No, not yet. Okay. If anybody else has, and if you want to provide feedback, again, please just send us the questions or comments and we will share them with the rest of the group. That's fantastic. Thank you for all the questions. They're great. And this is really nice to see how everybody's sort of thinking about the different questions and different ideas and asking questions around them. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to move on. We just have a few more slides for you. I want to thank the Hamilton Council. They're still here, but we just wanted to add a bit more as well. So I'm going to give the microphone to Maria from Alpha Plus, who also wanted to share a bit about other organization who is using iPads as well. Maria?
Oh, hello, Monica. Hello, everybody. This is Maria Moriarty from Alpha Plus. I had the opportunity, honor, and privilege of working with the folks at Hamilton as they got their iPad project underway, and I have to say it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in literacy. I think they were my absolute stars. Mm-hmm. But I'm Irish, although I'm Canadian, but I started life in Ireland, so I always like to bring Ireland into everything. And it turns out there's a small community-based program in Ireland, in Galway, which is a small city on the west coast of Ireland, that has been running what they've described as an iPad project for a couple of years. Two things about it: they work with very low-level literacy learners and ESL learners, and they have done a very good job of documenting their experience. And so this link here will bring you to an account of their project, and I think it's well worth looking at to supplement what we're learning from the folks in Hamilton. On this slide you'll see a quote, and it's from a student in the Galway Adult Basic Education Service program. And it really strikes me, this quote, because I think there's so much in there. Students have been using the iPads to improve their literacy and numeracy skills, but also to really enhance their digital skills. And those are very important in terms of building self-confidence, but also in preparing students to enter or re-enter the workforce. So I encourage you to read this short piece and follow on to their, they have a YouTube video also where they show what they're doing in the program. And it's very simple, but it's very effective. I think it's something we might want to think about working on a little more in Ontario, which is why we're so grateful to the instructors and to Helen, the ED in Hamilton, for sharing their experience. I know that there's a lot of exciting work going on in programs across Ontario and perhaps across the country. I know more about Ontario, but what we don't do very often is find ways to share what we're doing with each other, because I think that's how we all learn best. There was a project at Literacy Victoria in BC where they introduced iPods, and they did document their experience very well, but unfortunately adult basic education in British Columbia is in something of a crisis at the moment. So Literacy Victoria had to close for a while because they didn't have funding. They've reopened, but unfortunately they haven't yet reposted their iPad project documentation. So Hamilton, as usual, is leading the way. And if you feel like taking a quick trip to Ireland, do go check this out. Okay, Monica, next slide.
Yep.
I wanted to say a couple of things. One, I am also addicted to 4PICS, one word, and that's thanks to Hamilton. I learned about it when I went down there to do the workshop. I mean, it's sort of taken over a chunk of every evening of my life ever since. But iPads are not just about the apps. The apps, of course, are what we all hear about. It's what we all use. It's the exciting side of it. But the iPad has an incredible range of accessibility features. And I think it was Wilma who spoke about some of them and how her students are using them. And these are just some of the key accessibility features: the screen reader, the text-to-speech, the zoom, of course, and then the font size, etc. Now, I am working currently with a practitioner who works with students who have a range of developmental and physical disabilities, and she's using iPads with her students because the accessibility features are so important. And for example, she can use switch controls. There's a switch control feature. If you go into settings in an iPad, you'll see it. Students who do not have great manual dexterity, you cannot use a touch screen or a keyboard. So I would encourage you to think carefully about accessibility as well as the exciting apps that are available for the iPad, because it really does make a difference to students who have, you know, physical challenges, etc. There are as many resources to help you find apps. Okay, that's what I call this slide. There are as many lists on the internet of apps as there are stars in the sky. So you want to always find those that are useful to you. The App Store itself, which is the way into all of the apps for the iPad and other Apple devices, now has over 75,000 education apps. The caveat is a lot of them are for the K-12 sector because that's their big market, I guess. Many of those can be used with adults. So that's a good place to start, is just in the Apple Education in the App Store. There's another great site, and all these links are live, so you can go in and check them for yourself. There are adult educators in the US and Canada who make app recommendations, and those show up on sites like this. It's EdTech. Then there's guides to choosing appropriate apps. The one that I've put here is from Apple, and it's very, very good. It's some guide questions to help you as you're trying to decide whether or not apps are going to be useful to you. Kathy Schrock, who's a hero or heroine of mine, has a great about choosing apps, etc. There's another wonderful resource that I put on here called a handy chart for 75 educational apps. You can search them by learning activity, and again, it helps you to make decisions about which apps you want to download. And then if you, for example, there are specialized lists, and I just gave one example here, some good apps for learning vocabulary. Finally, the last link is 1 to 2. I find them very good guides to help you think through the effective use of iPads in your teaching. So all of these links are live, and so you can go in there and check out these resources. As I say, there are as many resources as there are stars in the sky, but I hope some of these will be useful to you. When you get your iPad, what do? There are several ways to get help. I would always say to people, encourage them to go first to GCF Learn Free. They have a whole module just on getting to know your iPad and using your iPad. The great thing about GCF Learn Free, it's designed for adult basic education students. It's in very plain English. I find it a very useful site when I go and when I need a piece of information about how to use an iPad or any other technology. Apple has a series of manuals that you can also use. The language is a little more dense, but they're still very helpful. Then there's a great site which is 101 iPad tips and tricks, just tells you how to do things so you look really as though you're in charge of your iPad. I have not yet mastered it, but I'm getting there. And then another site called Mashable has put out a very good beginner's guide to iPads. Again, these are just reference tools that you can use if you have a question, if you are getting lost a bit. But, and Monica says, and she's quite right, the best way to get to know your iPad is to use it. It's a tool, it's a toy, it's fun. Very hard to break. I haven't managed to break mine, and I'm on my second one. And I'm only on my second one because I had to upgrade because I use it so much. And if you get lost, you just press the round home button and start over. Just to finish up, because we work within the context of the Ontario Adult Literacy Curriculum Framework, which is the OALCF, I just thought there are various ways you can organize the apps that you want to use in your program. And one way to do it, of course, is by OALCF competency. So I just gave a couple of examples. The first competency, find and use information. Here are some apps that could be used to develop learning activities or to give practice opportunities to students. There's the Kobo, where you can download Kobo app, where you can download ebooks. Dictionary.com is a great little site. It's an online dictionary. Ebook search, if you want to look for ebooks, you can often find sets of free, especially if they passed copyright. So it's a good way to get ebooks. The Canadian Red Cross app I find amazing because it's just got all kinds of first aid and health information in there. CBC News, of course, has a very good app, and it's a very good resource for students. And then Google Maps. And there are lots of fun things that you can do with the Google Map app. And again, they can be used within the context of that find and use information competency. Do you want to, okay, here we go with communicate ideas and information. This is the communication competency. Speak It is a text-to-speech app, very easy to use. Dragon Dictation, I think we all know it from our desktops and our laptops. They have an app. Adobe Voice is a really fun one. Now again, we may be straying into the area where there's some cost associated with it. I think it's about $4.99 to download this app. And it's a great little app because you can record a story, and then you can add images and you can add music. So it's kind of a fun thing to play around with, and it's a very fun thing for students to play around with. And then, of course, we have a standard spelling app, of which there are many, many, many in the Apple education section of the App Store. This is just one example. It's they're like spelling games and practice activities. And students that I have met over the last year or so who have been using iPads have found that kind of app, which has been, where the learning has been gamified, so to speak, just as Sue was describing with the math games. They can be very motivating and very useful in building skills. And I think the last one, Monica?
Yep.
Is math, and Sue, of course, has given us lots of apps that she's using, and here are some others. There's a big calculator, which I like because my eyesight is not what it once was. It's a great app. A flashcards app, I think that Sue may be using that one. A fraction calculator app, a Math Academy app, which again is just a bunch of lessons, and of course the Khan Academy, which may be more useful for higher level learners, but I know there is some arithmetic, basic arithmetic in there too. So you can see there's a range, and you can, arrange your apps to suit your needs, obviously, but I just thought I'd try to put them in the context of the curriculum framework, because you can see that you will find that there are many, many that you can use in whichever competency you're working. I think that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria. So this is almost the final section for us. We just have one more piece where we want to ask you any final questions or feedback. what I did is in the chat box or question box, I put in a link to our survey. So please, before you leave today, I will be reminding you to follow the survey link and let us know how you felt about today's session. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to follow up on a few questions and comments from the participants. So Julie was asking, are there any French apps or resources available? I'm going to ask Maria first. Maria, do you know?
Absolutely, there are.
Yes, go ahead, Maria.
And if Julie will give us her contact information, I can send her some information about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I was going to suggest that, Julie, we can connect you with Guylaine, who is working with us at Alpha Plus. She does a lot of research in the Francophone community, Francophone resources. Yeah. So she may be a really good resource for you to help out with that question as well.
Absolutely. So just if Julie can just give us her email, then we can be back to her quickly. Absolutely.
And we also had a comment from Candice, who was saying that Tips and Tricks Pro is a good place to learn about iPads as well. So I'm assuming, Candice, it's a website, Tips and Tricks Pro. I will include that in a follow-up email as well. And we will be in touch with all the other resources we have. So as we are wrapping up, I just want to go back to Hamilton Literacy Council, to the team, and any final feedback, comments, suggestion for the participants. Helen, anybody else?
Go for it.
That's a really good note.
I just have one thing I'd like to say. It's Maria again. Sorry, Monica. Do what Hamilton is doing. That's what I would say to people.
Yes.
Follow their lead.
Absolutely. And I really liked Wilma's point about the fear and being afraid, and you shouldn't be. It's really amazing devices that you're using. The only time you can break them if you probably drop them and step on them and try to hit it on something. But when it comes to navigating or using it, whether it's you or your learners, they just have to explore and hit things, try different things. They just learn on their own. And it's a really, really nice and different way and process for learners to really be exposed to technology. Many of you know, and we all know that when we use desktops and devices like that, usually the barrier is the actual operating system. And when you start using tablets or iPads or any other device like that, that often becomes secondary because it's very, very easy to navigate through basic apps that we are trying to use. I'm just going to quickly go back to comment from Candice just to clarify that Tips and Tricks Pro is actually an app. So I'll find it and I put a link to it in the follow-up email. It is 4:02, so we are going to start wrapping up. I'm going to open the floor to any other comments and questions. I'm going to invite you to go to our feedback and make sure that you let us know how you felt about today's session. And I also just want to remind you that we have many more exciting sessions coming up. In the next month, in February, we are going to talk about Google for Education. That is looking at Chromebooks. We will have a guest speaker who will talk about managing them, using them. Very exciting. We also will have a Zaption session for ASL participants, and Flubaroo. Flubaroo is an extension on Google Chrome that allows you to do surveys and tests and quizzes using Google Forms, and Flubaroo will mark and grade the results. So if you're looking at doing quizzes or tests with your learners, you may be interested in learning how Flubaroo can make the process much easier for you. We also have knowledge sharing webinar that's coming up on problem solving in teaching technology rich environments. That one will be coordinated by Matthias Sturm from Alpha Plus, and all those are listed on our website with the registration links. We invite and welcome you to come and join us. All the sessions are free. We provide the slides, we provide the recordings afterwards, so we really, really hope you will be able to join us. And the final note is that if you don't receive our newsletters, please sign up to our mailing list. All this information, reminders, updates are going out every 2 months, so that way you can stay in touch and be informed about any new initiatives we have here at Alpha Plus. So I'm going to wrap up and thank everyone for participating. We're going to stay here just for a few more minutes to see if there's any questions or feedback. If you want to just finish for today, if you have to rush out, just close the window and that will be it.